Hey guys and girls, welcome to the London session recap for Monday the 24th of July 2023 for Euro Dollar. So daily chart, we are obviously bullish and we have had the swing breaker structure, so we know we are expecting that next swing pullback phase to start. The next key level was the supply level, which we haven't yet reached, but we know that we don't have to hit that in order to have a significant pullback. There was no bearish daily change of character because the fractal low is all the way down here. So in terms of structure on the daily chart, there's not a lot for us to work with to give us a signal of when that pullback was starting, but that's where we can use the lower time frames, if they start to break down. So yeah, daily chart is very simple, bullish, currently in the swing pullback phase, looking for price to potentially pull back down to the EQ of the range before we may potentially see that bullish trend continue. And this is kind of the obvious place in which we'd expect potentially that high low to form, right? It flipped this level of supply, swept some liquidity, led to the breaker structure. And also it's kind of the unmitigated extreme because all of these zones have already had a mitigation. So yeah, this level makes sense. There's no liquidity in the leg, there's no lid, right? So what do we need to see? We need to see it built in the pullback, and that can happen on the 4-hour chart, okay? Otherwise it's likely this low may go itself. So jumping down to the 4-hour chart, as last week, right, we were starting to try and play that daily pullback when that order flow shifted bearish on the 4-hour chart, where we got that strong liquidation, right? We got the fake break that broke the low, generating strong liquidity behind the high. That liquidity then got taken. So in theory, there should now be enough buy side liquidity here for the big guys to use to sell into, to position themselves short, right? But we got nice confirmation of that when price actually, this level of demand, this orange box failed, structure shifted. We've got a nice candle closure below, and then coming into Thursday, it was high probability to look for shorts from the supply chain that swept liquidity. This was really the tidy move. I captured a nice trade within there, but only got out for I think 3.2R, which is obviously a little bit painful when you see price fall however far it fell, over 100 pips. But yeah, it is what it is. So yeah, very simply in terms of like the outlook for 4-hour chart, the 4-hour swing is actually bullish. My swing low is around where the bottom of that big daily demand zone is. So yeah, just looking to follow this bearish internal order flow whilst the 4-hour pulls back. And then if that 4-hour bullish trend is going to continue, we will look for the internal structure to shift bullish to signal the end of that swing pullback, right? And then this becomes a strong internal low, and then we can keep buying these strong internal lows all the way up to the swing high, right? So coming into today's session and ready for kind of the next few days of the week, we are still in the premium of that swing range. There's no significant demand to the left, right? So that's kind of showing that the path of least resistance should be to the downside, at least for another little while, until we kind of come down to some of these more significant zones where we may see some deeper pullback. So as of right now, there's no real reason to assume that price is going to have a deeper pullback, but we do know after an internal break, we could have a bit of a deeper pullback, but kind of, that momentum is strong. There's not much nearby. I was just expecting really a bit of low volume on Friday, but potentially might just come in and get like a bit of another dump like that. Essentially just looking for that bearish sort of fractal structure to continue. Other than that, there's not really any immediate POIs or anything to work with on the 4-hour chart. So M15, obviously bearish as well to facilitate the 4-hour pullback. Yes, you can view this as a swing pullback and a swing breaker structure. That's absolutely fine. And then you could have that as your swing high. I just personally, it's just zoom out a little bit. Like, it just makes sense to me. If we broke up and closed above that high, I wouldn't be super convinced that we're bullish at that point. To me, this is the more obvious, clear swing in price. That's just why I kept it that way, just to keep it a little bit, clearer, cleaner, and more significant. So yeah, looking at price where it was, just fast forward it an hour to around Frankfurt Open, or a little bit before. I've gone a bit ahead there. We were around here, so. Yeah, the forecast is quite simple. Everything, the M15 is bearish. We're expecting the 4-hour pullback, right? The immediate bias is, for me, overwhelmingly bearish. Just looking for price to continue this overall swing structure. During Asia, we had pulled back up to pretty much the unmitigated level of supply in this range, right? So this is the swing high. So this is the range we expect price to be in. This is a strong high, so we expect it to hold if the bearish trend is going to continue. This level of supply is pretty much already mitigated. It's a bit of a messy candle, maybe there's something within here, but for the most part that's done. So move to the next level of supply, which is this level. We pulled back up during Asia. We had a fake break, right? We broke that low, pricing came up and liquidated it, and then we've got a nice candle closure below this level, and also below this low. If you weren't sure if that was the internal structure like that, you can see we've now come down and actually closed below it. So I viewed that as a strong internal high. This is the week low, and just looking for that bearish internal trend to continue to at least take out this low here. Now, the kind of downside to this, and I started to type it out in the pre-session analysis, but I wasn't really sure how to kind of explain what I'm trying to say succinctly, but you can kind of tell, right? We've had big expansive move, and then we've just been quite corrective and kind of almost starting to move sideways a little bit. So although everything's still pointing to the downside and you have that bearish order flow, you're kind of working within quite a tight range. And if you mark on the premium discount, we are within the discount of that range now. So it's not the most well priced to try and be looking to kind of follow this move, because this is pre-Frankfurt Open and it's looking like this. This POI is basically being mitigated. So for this to continue, it would probably come down and then create another POI here. And it's like, do I really want to be kind of shorting in here right into the low? We could get a bit of a bounce off here. It's not great, right? The decent trade is going to be somewhere up and around here. Like if this had happened during London, that's a lot better, because we're in the premium. We just had the liquidation there, right? Pull back up into here. Like that sort of first or second trade is the one, whereas we're kind of getting in a bit too late at this point with the session open, but happy to get involved if something cleans this up. So really at this point in my mind, I'm just thinking, let's just wait for a bit more development, because there's nothing really immediately here for us to work with. So the session opened, and then we broke up here to the upside with a decent amount of momentum. So now you can see that this supply chain has now failed. So this is where I was expecting actually we may get that 4-hour internal pullback and start to break to the upside, unless we're just going to do something, sweep these highs and maybe come down. I don't know, but either way, it's just a case of waiting for more development. So you can see that supply has failed, and now that supply has flipped to demand. So price does pull back into this demand zone. Now, could you have looked for a long from within here? Potentially, I would say it's pretty aggressive, because obviously you are trading against the M15 swing structure. Everything's pretty bearish. Like this could just be a bit of a range and start to chop around. I don't see it as very high probability, but maybe you just kind of want to just trade in line with the sort of order flow of the session. But yeah, I wouldn't view that as a high probable area in which to look for longs. If you did want to look for longs, there was no M15 lid, so you would need lower time frame, a strong liquidation to be built, and there wasn't one either. But price just comes in, gives a simple chalk, and then goes. I won't even bother showing you it. One, because there was no valid liquidity entry model, and two, it's not a very high probable M15 trade idea in my opinion, and that should be your main focus, right? Your medium time frame idea and POI should be what you're patient with and waiting for. So price came into there, mitigated it, and pushed up higher, so no problem, no need to get FOMO. Like I said, perhaps if now this is going to be that 4-hour internal pullback, then just wait to see if we can get that bullish M15 boss, show clear commitment. This then would become your strong M15 low, right? And then we have a new range to work with, and then either during later in London or New York or whenever, you can then look for a much higher probable position where you have that confirmation, rather than necessarily trying to force it when we haven't come off a significant level of higher time frame demand, right? I don't think at this point here there's a ton of confluence to trade this with confidence. Like, I'm not saying that you can't. I'm just saying, for the majority of you, if you kind of want to get consistent, have that higher strike rate, these are not really the areas in which you want to be forcing those positions in my humble opinion. So price pushes up a little bit higher. I don't believe we closed above this high here. Let's see, what's the high of that? 450, and the close here is 449. Yeah, so on this data feed, it was less than 0.1 pips. So potentially can be a liquidity sweep at this point, but let's see what happens next. And then we had some of the Euro PMI news releases being released throughout just after London Open, and we saw some high impact news push down. So at this point, it's just like, I'm just, I'm not bothered. I'm barely looking at price action at this point. If I'm completely honest with you, the M15 is not showing me anything convincing. Right, we've swept the high, so potentially we're pushing lower. But we've pulled back into this demand, so potentially we could do this and do that. Right, there's nothing really. I just have no interest. Potentially you might have wanted to play the sweep and look for liquidity entry model 4, something on the lower time frames within here. I don't believe there was an entry anyway, perhaps, but even then that's a bit aggressive against that momentum and into high impact news. So this is when, just patient, and then price is sold off. So now it's kind of really showing its intentions, right? It's just a liquidity sweep of the external range liquidity behind the swing high. We've had the high impact news. We've now had a candle closure below the low. We're continuing, the bearish swing trend. So there we go. Yeah, some sessions you're not going to get an entry that meets your plan. It's only Monday. No need to get FOMO or anything. It's just high impact news. It is what it is. And then we came into this 4-hour. It's just quite an insignificant zone, to be honest. Quite just a sell to buy wick zone. this here, which I was aware of but didn't bother marking because I don't view that as high probability at all. No inducement, kind of high up in the leg, didn't really flip anything that obvious. It's more of like a 15-minute zone really. If you look over here, there's like a big inside bar candle here. So yeah, if you start to see price come in like this and then have a bullish shock, like decent reaction, you can look left and justify the reaction and go, okay, maybe I'm happy to trade from there. So yeah, this now becomes RM15 strong swing high. We've had a bullish change of character, not quite an obvious liquidation on this time frame, but if you look at like the M1 or the M5, it's pretty big. So yeah, it's a decent sign that potentially we're going to get that M15 pullback now. As you can see, right, those big equal lows, and then we've had that shift in order flow there. So yeah, perhaps coming into New York, there may be an opportunity to play some longs to play this pullback. I doubt this will be the move where we'll kind of get that bullish break and have a deeper 4-hour pullback, or potentially even the 4 hours going to end that single pullback, simply because of what we're coming off on the 4-hour chart. It doesn't, I'd be surprised if this is the POI that's going to hold to then go and do that. I mean, that could happen. I would be surprised, but if we can see a break of these highs, then maybe. But for now, I would just assume it's a bit of a pullback, potentially back into this level, this supply range here. Watch the low there as well, and then potentially another movement down. But the only thing that potentially makes me think this high might not hold is it's a big straight push from news, and as we know, these can be quite inducing moves, and there's no lid here very often. If you start to see that strong bullish order flow holding, these highs can go. They're not always the best zones. So yeah, don't try to forecast too much. I try not to get too tricky with my predictions. If we were coming into New York now, you could look for these counter trend moves and see if that will hold to try and play a bit of a pullback up into the premium levels of prices, and then cautiously look for shorts to see if the strong high will hold, whilst recognizing there's no lid. So I would want to see, there's no lid here, so I'd want to see some convincing strong liquidity built and taken to the right. So yeah, bit of a slow start to the week, but it's just Monday. It is what it is. They're usually like that. I'm sure we'll get opportunities towards later in the week. Hopefully we can try and capture that higher time frame, higher low somewhere within here, and see if we can get that move eventually, or who knows, maybe we'll have a deeper pullback down somewhere near the actual daily low. Let's see how things form. So hope you guys took some value from that. I hope you have a good week, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.